Actually, in the last class, I just maybe forgot to mention one thing. So let me just mention that. So we said we were looking at planes on which the maximum shear stress occurs. And so let me just draw that picture here. So suppose if this is N1 star and this is N3 star, and then we saw that the plane on which the maximum shear stress occurs is inclined at 45 degrees, right? So this is 45 degrees. So the direction cosines will be 1 by root 2, 1 by root 2, right? With respect to the N1 star and N3 star coordinate system, the plane on which the maximum shear, so this is the plane on which the maximum shear stress, so let me call it as tau max. So that occurs at so the normal to that particular plane is at 45 degrees to the principal directions N1 star and N3 star. So these N1 star and N3 star are the principal directions corresponding to lambda 1 and lambda 3. So lambda 1, lambda 2 greater than lambda 3, right? So if we have this ordering, and then if N1 star corresponds to lambda 1 and N3 star corresponds to lambda 3, then we saw this particular result, right? That the plane on which the maximum shear stress occurs is inclined at 45 degrees. Now, this same result actually you can also get through the Mohr circle. So I think I forgot to mention that in the last class. So let me just mention that. So suppose if now this is your normal stress. So if I draw the Mohr circle, right, and now this axis corresponds to the normal stress, right? Normal stress, and this axis corresponds to the shear stress. So we see that now the maximum shear stress occurs here, right, and now you can see that it is inclined at 90 degree to the principal direction, to the first principal direction, where the this is the direction where the this is the plane on which the normal stress is the maximum, and this is the plane on which the normal stress is a minimum, right? And so we are traversing 90 degrees on the Mohr circle, and that if you travel theta on the Mohr circle, then in the physical plane you travel theta by 2. So basically 90 degree on the Mohr circle corresponds to 45 degrees on the in the actual situation. So here you can see that that is the reason that you will get that the plane on which the maximum shear stress occurs is occurring at 45 degrees. So I think I had forgotten to mention this part about the Mohr circle. So I am just clarifying that particular thing. Now we will go back to the discussion on the frames of reference that we were discussing the last time. So let us now discuss that. So we were discussing these frames of reference. So basically now these are two observers who are in arbitrary motion with respect to each other. Right? So this is now the O frame of reference. So this is O frame of reference, let us call it, and this is the O star frame of reference. And we saw last time that the position vector, so this is x star, this is x, and this is your C of t. Right? So this is your C of t. So we saw the last time that these are related as x star is equal to q of t times x plus C of t. Right? And then we also gave the example of a rotating disk, right? So we saw that last time we saw that there was this rotating disk with the with a channel like, or a groove rather, and then there was a wooden block, let us say, which is attached to a spring here, and that's one end of the spring is attached to the center, which is stationary, and one end is attached to the block here. And then we saw that suppose if it deflects by a distance delta, correct? And the original position we said was r. Then we showed last time that how to compute these x star and these quantities, right? So last time, let me just go over that again. So we saw that x star is so let me just draw that here. So yes, so we saw that x star was equal to r plus delta times cos theta. So this is theta, which is a function of time, because this disk is rotating. So this whole thing is rotating, and then this is your x star, y star. So this is with respect to the stationary frame, which is the O star frame, and then this rotating frame is the O frame. Okay, so this frame of reference here that I have drawn here, so that is the O frame. So that is fixed at a distance r from the center on the groove. Okay? And then now we saw this particular relation here, y star is equal to r plus delta times sine theta, and then you can express this in terms of this q of t times x plus u of t. So here your q of t we saw that is equal to ei star dot ej, right? The matrix. So this bracket is indicating that this is a matrix that is formed from ei star dot ej, and that comes out to be cos theta minus sine theta 0, sine theta cos theta 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay, so this is the cos theta, and then the position vector x as seen in the rotating frame of reference. So this is now the rotating frame of reference. So you can see that it is just delta, correct? In this rotating frame of reference, the position vector is delta 0, 0. So we are just talking of the center of this particular block here. So x is equal to delta 0, 0. And so q times x plus c, and then c is nothing but this distance here, which is r cos theta, r sin theta. So c is equal to r cos theta, r sin theta, and 0. So that is just the distance of the origin of the O frame of reference with respect to the O star frame of reference. And so if you now substitute, you will see that you will get back this x star. So you multiply q with x and then add c, you will get back the expressions for x star. So this was the picture, and then we saw that now we so let us now just go through what is the classical framework and what is the new framework that I am dealing with. So the classical framework basically is the following. Okay, so this, let me say the classical framework. So classical framework, and this is the current framework, let me call it. Current is whatever viewpoint that I am considering here. So this is the current framework. So here you require what is known as the inertial frame of reference. Inertial frame of reference. Okay. So this inertial frame of reference is something that is fixed. Okay, in some absolute sense. So typically the descriptions in books will be that it is something fixed to the distant stars and so on and so forth. But actually that is also not satisfactory, because even the stars are also in motion. So it is not clear exactly what is meant by inertial. But even if it is not clear, we have to imagine something that is at absolute rest. Okay, and so whatever is this absolute rest frame, that is called as an inertial frame. So this is the classical framework. Okay, so this is like suppose books by Feynman, Resnick and Halliday, and all your CBSE books, they all follow the same viewpoint. CBSE books, etc., etc. So you know all these books. Basically, so I'm talking of the physics books that you use in your 12th standard or first year engineering, right? So these books by Resnick and Halliday, Feynman, and all these CBSE books that you follow. So they follow this particular framework here. So this inertial frame is the frame in which F equal to ma is valid. Okay, so here, so I'm just writing it as F equal to ma. Okay, so this F equal to ma is valid only in the inertial frame of reference. And then if you have now something that is in motion with respect to the inertial frame of reference, then you have to add certain terms to the to this particular equation. Okay, so let me call this as now a non-inertial frame, non-inertial frame. So in this, when you have a non-inertial frame, then you have F equal to ma plus non-inertial terms. Okay, so non-inertial terms. Okay, so those include like the Coriolis acceleration, the centripetal acceleration, and so on and so forth. Okay, so basically you can see that the form of the equation is not the same in both the frames of reference, right? So because here in the inertial frame you have one equation, and in the non-inertial frame of reference you have the usual form plus some additional terms. So clearly these two forms are not the same, right? So here let me say that the form of the two equations is not the same. Is not the same. Okay, so what about body forces in this framework? So here the body forces are also the same, modular rotation. So suppose if gravity is acting on the earth, and suppose if you have like a spacecraft that is going around the earth, then the body force experienced in that moving frame of reference, or if you have an observer in a car that is going around, so the body force that is observed in the car is also the same, that is gravity modular the rotation. Means suppose if the observer, suppose if this this observer is rotated, is rotated with respect to this frame of reference, then so basically the B star will be Q transpose times B within this framework. So it will be just a rotated version of the body force, but basically the norm, as you can see, the norm is going to be the same. That means the magnitude of the body force will be the same, right? Because Q transpose does not change the magnitude of the body force. So suppose if the body force is gravity with respect to B star, then with respect to the moving frame of reference also, the body force is going to be this. So you are basically adding all the extra terms in these non-inertial terms. Okay, now let us come to the current framework here. So here, basically we say that there is no special frame. Let me put it like that. So no special frame such as the inertial frame of reference. Okay, such as the inertial frame of reference. Okay, so here basically we are saying that all the frames of reference are completely equivalent. That means an observer on the ground is equally qualified to describe a particular phenomenon as an observer who is in a car that is moving, or in a spacecraft, or in an aircraft. So whatever. So if two observers are in arbitrary motion with respect to each other, both are equally qualified to observe a particular phenomenon. So there is no special frame. I mean, so you can refer. So there is no special frame where F equal to ma is valid. So basically what we say is that now, since all observers have an equal standing, we say that even the balance law, whatever we are writing, is also of the same form in all frames of reference. Okay, so here we say that the balance laws are the same in all frames of reference. Balance laws are the same in all frames of reference. Okay, so what is the implication of this? So suppose if I derive now del x dot tau plus rho b is equal to rho a. We have seen this, right? This is a balance law in, let's say, one frame of reference, then in the star frame of reference, this will be the same form of the balance. So we will get that del x star. So just replace all the quantities which are unstarred. You simply replace them by the star version. So that means del x star dot tau star plus rho star b star is equal to rho star times a star. Okay, so basically we say now in this current viewpoint which I am following, that there is no special frame of reference, and so the form of the balance laws is also the same in all frames of reference. So basically, if this is the form that you give me in the unstarred frame of reference, then I get the form in the star frame of reference simply by replacing all the quantities by star quantities. So these star quantities is, so basically tau star is the stress. So suppose they are both observing the stress at this particular point. Okay, so this observer will observe the stress as tau of x comma t. This observer will observe the stress as tau star of x star comma t star. Okay, so this is what this particular observer will observe the stress as tau star. This particular observer will observe the stress as tau. Okay, so basically this tau star, rho star, v star are the same quantities as observed by the star frame of reference. In the star, by the observer who is using this O star frame of reference here. So that is the difference. So here, so you see here that there are additional terms like the non-inertial terms. Here there are no additional terms. In this viewpoint that I am using, there are no additional terms. But here we saw that the magnitude of the body force is the same. But in this viewpoint, the magnitude of the body force is not the same. Okay, so that we saw the last time. So if you now use this particular principle, so I am not going to go through the derivations. This whole exercise is just to give you some idea about how to compute body forces with this viewpoint here. So last time we saw that. So let me just again repeat that equation which I had written down the last time. So let me just write that particular equation here. Yes. So that equation was the following: B is equal to Q transpose times B star minus C double dot minus omega dot cross X minus omega cross X minus 2 omega cross B. So this was the equation that I wrote the last time. So now you can see that in the old framework we just had B is equal to Q transpose B star. That's it, right? And then now here in this viewpoint, the additional terms are in the body force. Okay, so finally using both the viewpoints, the final answers will be the same. Okay, so we are not saying that if you use this particular viewpoint, the answers are going to be different. No, the answers are going to be the same, but the viewpoint changes. Okay, so here, as I said, that this is a much more satisfactory viewpoint in the sense that there is no special frame of reference such as the inertial frame of reference to which we give a special status. So we say that all frames of reference are equally qualified to observe a particular phenomenon and write the governing equations in that frame of reference. And so you can see that they are following this principle here. And then as a consequence of following this, we get this particular equation. So I think last time I had forgotten the dot here, omega dot. So please correct that if you are writing this from the lecture here. But in the book it is given correctly here. So you can see now, so as I said that in the classical viewpoint, the body force is just same in magnitude compared to the B star. The B and B star have the same magnitude in the classical framework. In this framework, there are additional terms in the body force. So what are the implications of this? So now, actually, if you see these classical books by Feynman or again Resnick and Halliday and all these books, you will see that they will say that centrifugal is pseudo. They will say centrifugal. So centrifugal forces are pseudo. So actually, the acceleration is directed towards the center. But actually, if you put a block, okay, in a groove like what I had put, it would tend to fly out, correct? So clearly that in a rotating frame of reference, there is some force that is driving it out. So calling a centrifugal force pseudo is actually counterintuitive, okay, right, or counter to our experience, right? And whereas, so now if you adopt now this particular viewpoint, then we will see that we don't have to say that anything is pseudo or false or anything like that. The conclusions that will come out of this viewpoint will be exactly consistent with physical experience. So we will soon show that actually the body force that is experienced by the body in the rotating frame of reference is outward. So when we do the computations, I will show you that computation based on this particular formula. You will see that. So in that sense, actually, this viewpoint is much more satisfactory. And actually, Einstein has used a similar framework for his general relativity. That basically there are no preferred frames of reference. That all frames of reference are equivalent. So we are simply using that same viewpoint in the classical framework. Okay, so that principle is called as the principle of covariance, and so we are using that principle of covariance in the classical framework. Okay, and so now this is the expression for the body. So now let us look at the consequences of adopting this particular viewpoint. So let me just keep this formula and then let me erase the remaining stuff. So now let us analyze what are the body forces that arise in various kinds of situations, right? So okay, so now suppose you are in a car, okay, so this is the car, okay, and suppose now, so you are an observer here, okay, so yes, and now suppose if this car suddenly accelerates, okay, so then what happens, right? So it is your common experience that if you are in a car and if it suddenly accelerates forward, right, you are thrown backwards, correct? So that is the experience that you have. So let us see whether you get something consistent with that particular experience. So now in that particular case, your omega is going to be 0. So this omega is basically like a rotation of this frame of reference compared to a stationary frame of reference. So this is your O star frame of reference, and now this is your O frame of reference. Okay. So now you will see that this Q is just identity because this frame of reference has the same orientation as this particular frame of reference. So Q is going to be identity for all times, and so these omegas and omega dot and all these things are going to be 0 because these represent the rotation of this particular frame of reference with respect to the O star frame of reference. So here it is clear that it is not rotating, so that is just going to be 0. So finally what you will get is that B is equal to B star minus C double dot, correct, for this particular case that I am discussing here. Now you will see that this C double dot is this acceleration here, and this B star is gravity, correct? So that is just G times Ez, so suppose if this is Ez, then this will be minus G times Ez minus A times Ex, correct? So this is the body force that would be experienced in the moving frame of reference. So here, look at the sign. See, you get the sign which is negative, right? So basically it says that you will have a body force. So in this frame of reference, there is a body force that is acting in the negative direction, and that is exactly what you experience also, right? And then similarly, suppose if the car decelerates, right, then in that case you are thrown forward, which is why you have airbags, right? You have airbags in the car for precisely that reason, that because if you suddenly brake, you are thrown forward, right? And you should not bang against the steering wheel or the windscreen. So basically for that you need these airbags to break your impact. And so here you can see now that the A will be negative in that particular case, right? So if you put an A that is negative, minus of minus will become plus, and so then that means your body force is in the positive direction. So of course this is in addition to the force of gravity that you are experiencing. Similarly, now let us take the case of a lift. Okay, so lift. So suppose now you take a lift which is now freely falling. Okay, so this is a lift, and now so this is a freely falling lift, right? Freely falling lift. Then in this freely falling lift, you would experience weightlessness, right? Because so you're just falling freely, and then so in the lift, and so you would just experience weightlessness, right? So now let us see what again in this. So let us draw. This is your O star frame of reference. This is your O frame of reference, right? And now you will see that in this frame of reference, so suppose if this is Ez, correct, then your B star is equal to minus G times Ez, correct. So that is the body force in the stationary, with respect to the stationary observer. See, so you will again get back the same formula here. Even in this case, you will get back the same formula, because this frame of reference is again not rotating with respect to this particular frame of reference. And so all these omega dot, all these things are just going to be 0 in this particular case here. So what about C double dot, right? So C double dot is going to be also minus G times Ez, right? Because it is accelerating. So this is going to be your C, correct? This is your C is the distance of this observer with respect to this particular observer, and so that distance is just because the lift is freely falling, right? And so that is why C double dot is also going to be minus G times Ez. So when you substitute that in this particular formula, what you will get is that B is equal to B star minus C double dot will be equal to 0, right? And that is exactly like what you would feel, right? You would feel weightless if you are in a freely falling lift. Now imagine a scenario that now you are sitting in a rocket, correct? And then now that rocket is accelerating upwards, right? Just like at lift off of a rocket, correct? So at that time, all these astronauts, they talk of G forces, G for gravity. So they talk about that they are experiencing 2G or they are experiencing 3G, or whatever. So suppose now you are in a rocket. So now this is a rocket which is accelerating upwards, right? So this is now a rocket that is going upwards here. And so again you have an observer who is on the ground here. So this is O star. And now let us write this particular scenario here. So I'll erase this particular part. Now again your B star is minus G times Ez, correct? So that is still the same. But now, this is, so suppose at lift off you are accelerating in the upward direction. So let us say that acceleration is 2G. So you are accelerating at 2 into 9.8 meter per second square, suppose. So now this is your C, okay? And now this is an astronaut here. So this is an astronaut, and now it is accelerating upwards. So then what will happen, right? So then you will see that here now your C double dot is equal to 2G, let us say, Ez, correct? And then now what is the force that is experienced by the astronaut? So that is B is equal to minus G minus 2G, correct? Minus 2G times Ez, correct? And so that is equal to minus 3G times Ez, correct? So basically, if you are accelerating, at tremendous speed, you are just accelerating at lift off, suppose of a rocket, right? And if your acceleration is 2G, then you would experience a minus 3G force in the downward direction, right? So you will be basically pinned to your seat, correct? Because it is accelerating at such a high speed, and so you will experience, you will feel yourself much heavier than what you. So this is what you will feel, that basically. So as I said, that even fighter pilots or astronauts, they talk of G forces. So this is exactly the G force that you feel when you are blasting off into space. And again, the same thing that if you are coming down with an acceleration, then you will start feeling weightless if it is in free fall. So in fact, actually, that is how they simulate weightless conditions for astronauts on Earth, right? So basically, you take a plane, okay, you go very high, let us say at some height, and then you will sort of in a free fall, and then of course, before you hit the ground, you again level off. Okay, so here this is like almost like a free fall. So that gives you basically conditions of weightlessness because of whatever I just calculated here. Now let us take a more complicated example where now you are on this spinning disc here. So okay, so let us see that particular example and see what the body forces are in that particular case here. Yes. Yes, so let us look at the rotating disc example now. So this is a slightly more complicated example. Okay, so this one here. So now what I am going to do is that initially in my last class I had taken the O frame of reference here somewhere. Now I will simply take it here itself. Okay, so this is now my O frame of reference, but it is still rotating, but located at the origin. And then the O star frame of reference is fixed to the earth, let us say, and it is also located at the center of the disk here. So this is my, so this here is my O star frame of reference, and this rotating thing, this one here, so this is my O frame of reference, right? So, and we saw that the formula for omega, so last time I think I had given you this particular relation here. This is E2 dot E3. This is E3 dot E1, and this is E1 dot E2. And so here now let us look at what the E1. So this is now your E1. This is your E2. This one here is E1 star. This one here is E2 star. Correct? So now we can compute it using this particular relation here. So you can write E1 as equal to cos theta times E1 star plus sin theta times E2 star. Right? So you can write the, so this basis vector is now rotating because this E1, E2 coordinate system is rotating with respect to the E1 star, E2 star coordinate system, and so the relation between the basis vectors, so E1, you can see E1 is just cos theta times E1 star plus sin theta times E2 star. So that is what I have written here. Then similarly, you have E2 is equal to minus sin theta times E1 star plus cos theta times E2 star. Correct? E2 star. And let's take E3 equal to E3 star. So that third direction is whatever is pointing out of the board, that will keep it as the same. So now this E1 star and E2 star is fixed to the ground, right? So that is stationary, that is not changing with time. So what is changing with time? So that is theta, right? Theta is changing with time because this disc is rotating, this groove will rotate. So this theta is actually a function of time, right? So here, now suppose if I compute E1 dot and E2 dot, then I get the following. So E1 dot is equal to minus theta dot times sin theta times E1 star plus theta dot times cos theta times E2 star. And then similarly E2 dot will be equal to minus theta dot times cos theta times E1 star minus theta dot times sin theta times E2 star. Okay, so this is what you will get, and then E3 star is just 0. E3 dot is equal to 0 because that is not changing, right? E3 equal to E3 star, so E3 dot is equal to 0. Now if you substitute it in this particular relation here, so these are dots. Okay, dot means time derivative. So then if you substitute this in your omega formula, then what you will get is omega is equal to 0, 0, theta dot. Okay, so this is the formula for omega. So here you can see that basically E3 dot is 0, correct? E2 dot is some function of E1 star and E2 star, and that is perpendicular to E3, which is the same as E3 star. So this is 0, this is 0, and then only E1 dot dot E2. So that is E1 dot times E2. Okay, so that so this is E1 dot dot this particular object, and so this is what you will get as omega. Okay, now let us compute the individual terms in this particular formula here. Let's do that. So, okay, so let us go back to this particular formula that we have. So, B is equal to Q transpose times B star minus C double dot minus omega dot cross X minus omega cross X minus 2 omega cross B. Okay. So, I want to compute now the body force at this particular point, which is located at a distance. Let me just see what the notation. So let us call it as R. Okay, so this distance, let us call it as R. So this distance is R. Okay, so that is the distance at which the center of the block is located along this particular groove, as measured along this particular groove here. Right, and now we'll see that the C is equal to 0 because both the origins are coinciding, right? So C is equal to 0 and that C, the distance C is not changing with time. So C dot is equal to 0, C double dot is equal to 0. So this term is going to go away in this particular thing here. Right, and then now let us imagine that this disk is actually rotating in the horizontal plane. Okay, so the B star is perpendicular to that because that is just gravity. Okay, so let us just ignore this particular term because in this case we are just interested in finding the body forces that are in this plane. Okay, so suppose this disk is rotating in this horizontal plane, gravity is in this particular direction. So let us just ignore this because that is in the out of plane direction. Okay, so this is gravity. So let us say this is gravity. It is out of plane. So let us not worry about this particular force at this moment. It will act. So I am not saying that it is 0, but right now it is not relevant for us because we are just trying to find the body forces which are in the plane of the rotating disk here. Right. Then let us take that the disk is rotating at constant speed. So these are just some assumptions that I am making. Okay, so then what happens? Then the omega dot will be equal to 0 because that is omega dot will be theta double dot. So let us assume that theta dot is equal to constant. Let us say. So then this term goes to 0. Okay, and let us take that. So I have shown this spring right last time. So because of the spring, let us say that this block reaches to some equilibrium. Now this velocity v is the velocity with which this point is moving with respect to the O frame of reference, correct? And now, so you can see that with respect to the rotating frame of reference, it has reached to some steady state, correct? So in the beginning, it will oscillate a little bit because it is trying to come to equilibrium. But after some time has elapsed, right, then it will come to some stationary position because it is trying to fly outward, but the spring is holding it back, right? The spring is pulling it back. So it reaches to some equilibrium position, which we have called as R, correct? So that is the equilibrium position. So the V is also 0. Okay, so assume that V is also 0. So this term also goes out. Okay, so now the only force that is left is this minus omega cross X. And so let us compute that now. So omega is equal to theta dot times Ez, correct? So that is theta dot Ez, that is the theta dot is in this particular direction here, this omega, and this X is equal to that is just the position vector along this particular direction, right? Because it is in the rotating X, remember, is the position vector as measured by the O frame of reference, right? And this O frame of reference is rotating because that is fixed to the disk. So you will get that X is equal to R times Ex. Okay? So that is the this one. So now let us compute these various terms. So what will be omega cross X? So omega cross X will be equal to, so Ez cross Ex will be Ey. Correct? So that will be theta dot times R times Ey. Correct? Because Ez cross Ex is Ey. So that is in this particular direction. Ey is in this particular direction here. Then what about omega cross X? So omega cross X will be equal to theta dot times Ez cross theta dot times R times Ey. and Ez cross Ey is minus of Ex. So that is equal to r times theta dot square times Ex, right? Minus with a minus sign. So remember there is a minus sign here. So I will get that minus of omega cross x is equal to, I will get r times theta dot square times Ex. Okay. So it is basically r times omega square times Ex, and Ex is in this particular direction, right? So you can see now that I get a force that is outward. So that is exactly consistent with physical experience. So what I have been trying to show is through all these examples, right? So I have given you several examples. So I have given you the passenger or the driver in an accelerating car. He feels a force that is backward, or if you decelerate suddenly, you feel a force that is just pushing you forward. Okay, so that, and then we discuss the freely falling lift where you feel weightless. Then we discuss an accelerating rocket that is going upward, and then you will feel 2g or 3g of force depending on the acceleration, depending on with what acceleration you are going upwards. Okay, so that is the g force that you would experience. And now this is a slightly more complicated example where we have shown now that actually it will feel a force in the outward direction, right? So this you will get exactly something which is consistent with physical experience, right? So in this viewpoint, I don't need to call centrifugal as pseudo force. Okay, so because this is now with this particular viewpoint, you get that it is actually directed in the outward direction, right? So so what I have been trying to point out is that this viewpoint is perhaps better than the classical viewpoint that is followed in almost all the books on classical physics. That means this about the inertial frame and the non-inertial frames of reference here. So the reasons are twofold. So the first reason, as I said, that to have a special frame of reference itself, which is at absolute rest, itself does not make much sense, because there is nothing which is at absolute rest in the universe. And so giving some frame a special status and then deducing the equations for a non-inertial frame from that inertial frame is not very satisfactory. Okay, so here, as I said, we adopted the viewpoint that all frames of reference are equivalent in the sense that they are equally qualified to observe a particular phenomenon. And then we saw the implications of adopting that particular axiom. So this is the implication, right? The implication is that you get this particular body force, and then you will see that it is now exactly consistent with the physical experience, right? With all these examples I showed you. And so this is now a centrifugal force, and so it is no longer a pseudo force, right? Because this is exactly in the outward direction. So suppose now if I cut this spring, then the block will tend to fly outward because of this particular body force, right? So because the body force is now pointing in the outward direction, so if I cut the spring, the block will just fly off here, right? So actually, this viewpoint is very advantageous to follow. So let us look at certain examples of where this viewpoint is very advantageous. Okay, so let us take a spinning disc now again. Okay, so let's take a same example. So this is now a spinning disc. So this is a spinning disc. Okay, so this is going with some omega, right? And now I wanted to compute the stresses that are generated due to these centrifugal forces, right? So what I will do is that see, suppose if I now choose, right, a stationary frame of reference, okay, then actually trying to solve this particular problem becomes very complicated, because see, suppose now I write del x dot tau plus rho b is equal to rho times a. Now the disk is actually accelerating with respect to the stationary frame of reference, right? And so this term is non-zero, correct? And then it becomes quite complicated to so one can do it. So I'm not saying it cannot be done, but it gets very complicated. Instead of that, we would like to solve a statics problem, right? So where there is no acceleration, just
I solve rho times del dot tau plus rho b equal to 0. So that, I mean, that is far more simpler. So what I do is that I take a frame of reference that is rotating now, okay? And now with respect to the rotating frame of reference, let us imagine that there are no oscillations with respect to the rotating frame of reference. So again, in the beginning when the disk starts rotating, maybe it will oscillate a little bit along the tangential direction, but after it reaches to certain steady state, so let us imagine that it has reached some steady state. Now, each point on this disk is going to be stationary with respect to this rotating frame of reference, correct? And so the acceleration, so basically now the velocity, the acceleration of this particular, of any point in fact with respect to the rotating frame of reference is going to be 0. So you will basically get 0. But now, so I have just done this computation, right? This body force computation. So the same computation is valid because it's the same spinning disk. So suppose if there is a point that is at a distance r, let us say, then all I have to do is that along the radial direction, now we have shown that there is a body force along the radial direction, so I just have to substitute it here. So all I have to do is del x dot tau plus r omega square, so this, theta dot square times er is equal to 0, right? So this is the equation that I would just need to solve. So I can solve it in the polar coordinate system, right? And then I can just solve it as a statics problem because things have reached to a steady state. And so this is the big advantage of adopting this particular viewpoint here, that basically now I can solve this problem, find out what are the stresses in this rotating frame of reference, okay? And then from that I can recover the stresses with respect to the stationary observer also. So again, I will not go into all those details, but then now you may ask that what happened to these particular terms? I mean, can I give an example of where these terms? So for simplicity I have neglected these terms, but even that computation is not very difficult. So suppose now, let us take the example that there is a groove again, right? And so now there is a spring here, right? And then it was rotating in this particular groove here, right? Now, as I said, you cut off the spring. Suppose you cut the spring. Now this block, it starts to move in this particular direction here, right? So now the block is moving along, so let us call it as the EX direction here. So here you will have that V is equal to some V times EX, V naught, let us call it. So it is going by with some velocity, let us say, okay? Then now what will the Coriolis force look like, correct? So let us look at that. So your omega in that particular case, so omega we have seen is equal to theta dot times Ez, correct? And so your omega cross V, right? Omega cross V will be equal to V naught times theta dot times Ez cross Ex will be Ey, right? So basically it's along this particular direction here. And then you will see that it is minus of 2 omega cross V. So minus of 2 omega cross V will be equal to minus 2 V naught theta dot Ey. Right? So basically the force that this block, so suppose if this block is moving in this direction, then it will experience a force in this particular direction. Okay, so basically suppose if it is not tightly fitting, okay, then what will happen, suppose if this groove is slightly wider than the width of the block, right, so the block is going, so then what will happen is that it will touch along this particular edge here, right, because so it will get pushed towards this particular edge, and so this edge will exert a reaction on that. Basically it will lose contact from this edge, from the upper edge, because as I said, that the force that this block is experiencing is along the minus Ey direction. So I'm saying a lot of these things become very clear with this particular viewpoint. And then similarly here also, suppose we have neglected this term, but even if you keep this particular term here, so suppose now you imagine that the theta dot is also not 0, suppose, right? Then in that case, this term, let us compute that. So again, I will just use this part of the board. You will see that omega dot is equal to, now it will become theta double dot, correct? Because that is theta double dot times Ez, and x is again, that is just simply r times Ex for the center point of this particular block, and then you will get minus omega dot cross x will be equal to r minus r times theta double dot times Ey. Correct? So again, that is also in the minus Ey direction. So that is also, so just like the Coriolis force, this force is also in this particular direction. So basically, as I said, that if the block width is slightly less than the groove width, it will push against the lower one, okay, and it will lose contact with the upper one, yeah, because of these forces, right? So what I'm trying to say is that directly you can get a physical idea about the direction of the forces, the magnitude of the forces that are acting with respect to this, with respect to the rotating frame of reference. And in problems like turbines and things like that, it simplifies the calculation, because now you can directly treat it as a statics problem instead of treating it like a transient problem. And then within this static framework, now it's much easier to find out what the stress distribution is. So okay, I think we will stop.